In traditional civilizations, art wasn't just about creating for the sake of it, but rather it was a path of spiritual and inner growth. Art wasn't just about physical, but also spiritual as well. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhamad Shaireza bin Jaafar, and today my presentation will be based on a book by Persian philosopher Dr. Hasan that is titled Islamic Art and Spirituality. Before I start, I would like to introduce to you about the author, Dr. Hasan. Like I've mentioned earlier, he's not only a Persian philosopher, but he is also a scholar in Islamic studies and comparative religion. He is also a university professor of Islamic studies at George Washington University. His contributions to the academic world is tremendous, as he has wrote over 50 books, 500 articles on Islamic studies, philosophy, not only that, also in comparative religion and philosophy. And we can see that his interest goes beyond this realm, as he also touched on the environmental crisis, in which he writes philosophy and religion in the dimensions of the environmental crisis. So it's clear that I start this presentation with a quote. Now that 1 minute has passed, what do you think the quote implies? Well, the quote implies a juxtaposition between traditional art and contemporary art, meaning that in traditional art, in traditional civilization, art always holds spiritual value behind it. It sounds complex, I know, but to put it simply, this book supports the idea that art and spiritual are interconnected, meaning they both go hand in hand. And that is my first point. The second point is, in this presentation, I will also explore what are the forms of Islamic arts, and end my presentation with a notion that Islam is the religion of beauty. And I hope that by the end of this presentation, I'm able to enlighten not just myself, but also all of us regarding our understanding on Islamic art, and also makes us to appreciate arts more. So my first point is why Islamic spirituality and Islamic art goes together. The reason is that Islamic art is deeply rooted in the idea of unity. As the Quran says, "Our Lord, you have not created this in vain." Islamic art is more than just beautiful, it's symbolic. It represents deeper spiritual truth and comes from something much deeper, reflecting the spiritual truth of Islam. This art acts as a message from the core of the Islamic tradition, speaking to those who are open to its meaning. There are two purposes of Islamic art. The first one is to inspire inner peace and connection to God for individuals, and it also creates a harmonious environment. This also supports what the Quran has stated, that wherever you turn, you will see the face of God. So throughout history, the peaks of Islamic art have always coincided with the presence of a powerful, living spiritual and intellectual current within the Islamic tradition. This is no coincidence. The creativity and perfection of Islamic art are directly fueled by the vibrant spirituality and intellectual depth of Islam. When this spiritual energy is alive, it breathes life into the art, giving it meaning and purpose. But the reverse is also true. When the spiritual dimension of Islam weakens or is neglected, Islamic art begins to lose its value. And in modern times, fortunately, we've seen this more apparent, in which they separated the art and the spiritual, meaning that the artists in contemporary times make art just for the sake of it. In some cases, it has been almost entirely destroyed, as the life force that sustains it, Islam's spiritual and intellectual depth, has been overlooked by many artists. So Islamic art and spirituality are not just connected, they are inseparable. One cannot thrive without the other. Now that we can see Islamic art reflects a deep intellectual vision, not through reason alone, but through spiritual insight and the grace of Islamic tradition. This reveals to us a deeper truth of Islam and the world. Think of it like this. Think of Islamic art and spirituality like a lamp and its light. The lamp is the form, meaning that it is the structure of the Islamic art, and the light is the spiritual, the context of the art. The light cannot be focused or shared without the lamp. So together, they illuminate the path to understanding, deeper truth, and connecting with the divine. Now that we understand that both of these elements are interconnected, next I would like to highlight some of the forms of Islamic art mentioned by Dr. Said in his book. The first form of Islamic art I would like to highlight is the Islamic architecture. There's a hadith I quote The earth was placed for me as a most and purifier. Imagine the earth as a vast canvas where every place is a potential most, sacred and full of meaning, just like how sunlight reflects on water. A believer's faith shines in a mosque. Islamic architecture captures this idea, using light and design to reflect spiritual truth and create spaces that connects us to the divine. Before I start, I would like to give a brief introduction about how architecture first began to Islam. So architecture first began to Islam when there is a need of creating sacred space in a space which had lost its sanctity because of human habitat. Dr. Said mentions that once we as humans begin to build, we destroy the sacred quality of natural space. We created our own human spaces, and this is when the mosque architecture starts to build. Islamic architectures are great in numbers, and I'm pretty much sure that all of us here are aware that there's so many Islamic architecture out there. But I think one of the significant ones that I would like to highlight is the architecture of the Kaaba. The Kaaba is the oldest and most sacred structure in Islam, seen as the point where the divine connects with the earth. According to Islamic tradition, it was first built by the Prophet Adam and later rebuilt by Prophet Ibrahim. So this architecture reflects a heavenly temple and also symbolizes spiritual center of Islam. And interestingly, when it comes to Islamic architecture, it does not deal with the core structure alone, but it also takes into account every single detail that might deem as merely decorative. I would like to bring to the spotlight an example of what we think as decorative, but it actually serves huge symbolic to the Islamic spirituality. For example, the stalactites in the court of lions of Alhambra are not just decorative or practical structures to support the roof, but rather it carries a deeper meaning. It symbolizes the way divine light flows from the heavenly spiritual realm into the physical material world. Think of them as rays of light shining from higher perfect source down to our earthly existence. I think we are all aware that when we see Islamic architecture, there's always going to be another element accompanied it, and that is calligraphy. Islam is very renowned for its calligraphy. Unlike other religions, for example, like Christian, they don't really have that luxury as Islam does. As we can see here, calligraphy plays a very important role in Islam. Calligraphy here means the art of creating beautiful writing by hand or paintbrush or any other writing instruments. And I believe that we are all aware that calligraphy serves as one of the significant forms of Islamic arts, as it always been connected to the divine word, and that is the Quran. It's true that Islamic calligraphy started with the Quran, and we can see that this art evolves. Now that in contemporary times, we can see that calligraphy is also painted or written in architecture, in decorative items, and also in poetry. I think for me, this art is really mesmerizing, and I'm sure all of us feel the same way too. Imagine how handwriting alone can remind us of the presence of God, right? One of the examples of calligraphy that I'm going to show here is the Karatet Madrasah in Konya, a stunning example of Seljuk architecture. It showcases the widespread use of sacred Quranic calligraphy. So this calligraphy is beautifully intertwined with geometric patterns. Another calligraphy in the architecture form is apparent when, imagine we stand before the Sheikh Lutfalah Mosque belonging to Safavid Isfahan. This calligraphy here is accompanied by a symphony of colors, geometric forms, and arabesque. Geometric forms and arabesque is also another important art forms in Islam, and the combination of this really illustrates how the craftsman here really puts the effort to really highlight the Islamic value behind it. Besides that, in decorative items as well, calligraphy can also be found, interestingly. One example is, I'll show here is the pen box created by Shazi for Maid al-Mulk al-Muzaffar. This shows how much Muslim craftsmen valued calligraphy. So they didn't just use it in religious texts, but also in decorated everyday items. The idea was to basically keep God's word present in all aspects of life, and in some way reminds us that whatever we do, we always feel the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And similarly, the 13th century Persian brass used for washing hands also ingrained with calligraphy. And this also showed, I think in this case, the calligraphy here is used interestingly because when we wash our hands before we eating, for example, it is often paired with the recitation of dua, right? So here, I think when the calligraphy is ingrained in the jar of washing hands, it just reminds us that that we should be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and served as a reminder of the divine during these everyday rituals. I quote, "Handwriting is jewelry fashioned by the hand from the pure gold of the intellect." Another art form that I would like to bring to the spotlight here is the chanting of the Quran. And in the book, Dr. Shaireza considers this art form, which is the chanting of the Quran, is the most nourishing music for the soul of the faithful. The Prophet taught Muslims how to chant the Quran, but he didn't invent it. There are modulations. So the basis of the Quranic traditional singing is based on science, in which it is very carefully directed. This is a permanent art form in Islam, and it is considered to be the highest form of music. So the last point that I would like to point out, I would like to argue that Islam is the religion of beauty. And even in the book, Dr. Said mentions that no authentic expression of the truth can ever be separated from beauty. Everything true is beautiful, including the human soul. When it's truthful, it is beautiful. Dr. Said believed that I think we are all agree that ugliness is human invention. Look at the world of nature. Everywhere we go, everything is beautiful. From the waterfall, from the mountain, in the forest, even in the underground. When you look into the volcano, even the lava itself is beautiful. Even in the underwater, it's beautiful, right? So there is no ugliness in nature. And other religions are also beautiful. The churches, the cathedral. So all of this is beautiful. And as Islam, we need to understand that and appreciate the sentimental value, even if the art is from other religions. We all hold to this universal promise. For example, in the mosque of Hagia Sophia in Turkey, there is a painting of Christ and other biblical figures. But you imagine you all praying in congregation inside the mosque, and and out there is a painting of other religion. I know it feels weird. It feels like it's not even Islamic. But as Islam, we are encouraged to appreciate the art, and we should not oppose it. By exploring Islamic art and the profound principles that inspire it, we can rediscover a sense of the sacred in our lives. Just as the light penetrates the darkness, so too can the beauty of Islamic art illuminate the human heart, leading us towards a greater understanding of ourselves and the culture. I really hope that my presentation not only gives me a sense of understanding and appreciation towards the Islamic arts and also arts in general, but also it enlightens us today here in this room to be more mindful and to become more appreciative towards Islamic arts. Now that we have explored that Islamic art and spirituality are interconnected, the forms of Islamic art, and how Islam itself is the religion of beauty. I think that's all for me. Thank you very much.